Okay, what's up everybody? So inside of this video here today, we're going to go into how we functionally move the pelvis in the backswing and the downswing, how it can take care of our linear movements, how it can help take care of our rotational movements, and ways that I would say make it a lot easier and a lot more stabilized for us to be able to deliver the golf club more consistently. So in my opinion right here, the pelvis and the feet are probably two of the most important pieces of what happens in a golf swing, apart from what actually happens with the golf club when we go into body parts and etc. Because the feet and the pelvis, what these do is these stabilize the ability for us to move the upper body a way that we would like to, and how the arms are going to be working around our spine so that we can be more consistent with the delivery of the golf club to impact. So when we first start and we look at this right here, when we look at how the pelvis is built, we have three different points that we have the ability to rotate around, and these can also be ever changing. Okay? I would prefer to not see them ever changing, but we do have the ability to move the pelvis wherever we want to. Okay? So when we firstly look at the anatomy of it, so I've got my left femur, which works into my left hip socket. So this right here is a pivot point that we could use in regards to rotation. Then I've got my right femur that goes into my right hip socket. So this right here is a pivot point that I can move around. And then I've also got where my tailbone, my sacrum connect my pelvis to my spine. And this right here, this is another point of rotation that we can actually work ourselves around. So one of the ways that I like to explain the pelvis in ways that I think can really help out players from a ball striking standpoint consistently is how we would actually use in setup right here, how we would use the left side to work on more of what we would refer to as a wrench analogy. So like if this is the head of my pelvis and this is the head of the wrench, I would be rotating this more this direction, then I would start unwinding from here. So if I go into this and I explain this for you right here, this is one of my favorite explanations of how the pelvis right here can actually dictate and help us, one, with our rotation, and two, it helps us take care of all of our linear movements that we need and that we have in our golf swing right here. So if we called this line right here, this would be the center of our body. And we're going to use this as a right-handed player analogy. It works just the same, it's just opposite for a left-handed player. So if this side right here, this is my left hip, this side over here, this is my right hip. So if I started right here, so this would be 50-50. If we used this, so this is our wrench analogy right here, this would be the head of our wrench. So if we turned the hips back here at a 45-degree angle around this point, and now we took this trail side, our right side here, and we kept that the same, and we start to work the hips back to square in the downswing, that is now taking care of all of the linear movement that I actually need in the golf swing right there. So that is how we can use the pelvis from a rotational standpoint to create our rotation in our space that we need in the backswing, how it would initiate the transition of our downswing, and how this would actually start to move our divot forward right here. So again, so if I was standing up here and I did this right here, so this would be me standing here at 50-50. Here's the head of my wrench. So I'm going to be taking the trail side, and you'll see this right hip now, when this starts to move, we're going from the widest point of our hips right here, and when we turn the right side back with a little bit of extension here in the trail leg, we're now going to the most narrow point of our hip. So now what I would do is I'd slide this down. The right hip's going to stay here. Left hip starts to turn, and you can see that is now taking care of the linear movement of my lower body and moved it in front of the center of where I've started, which is allowing me to start to get forward here on the golf ball. Okay, so the pelvis is absolutely really unique, because the way that we present the pelvis, especially in the backswing, especially in the downswing, is going to have one of the larger influences on what we can do with the upper body. So if I showed you this from this angle right here, so if I went here, when I turn my right hip back, and this works here like this, now I'd slide this down. Now my trail hip right here is going to stay here. As I start working this part of the pelvis back, you can see I'm actually also moving myself into pretty darn good posture. This is putting me in a position to where now I can start moving the trail side of my body forward into the golf ball, and then I could be up into extension on the through side right here. So this is a really cool way of just thinking about how simple we can actually keep the pelvis and the actual movements that really go into helping a player out, especially from a stabilization standpoint. The other thing that I will tell you that I think the pelvis is hugely responsible for is it helps us create torque in the ground right here. So when I'm standing right here, and we're going to use this wrench analogy again. So as I start to turn, I've obviously got ground pressure to start because I have a little bit of knee flex in. So I'm going to feel like my feet are gripping the ground right here. And as I start to turn the pelvis, if I actually release the pressure in my feet, that would be the amount of torque that I'm building up. That right there is giving me a grip and giving me control of what's happening with the ground. And then the same thing would hold true when I now change direction back to here. I have twisted against the ground here, not because I'm trying to just twist my feet or move my knees. I'm just training what the pelvis should be doing and how this is putting me into a really good hitting position right here to where I can be a lot more consistent in being able to time my strike. Now, the only thing that I would say when you practice hitting shots like this, where I do see players occasionally, I will see them get into a little bit of trouble, is when we allow the knees to really start to act independently with movements right here. I could turn the pelvis the right way, but now if I really increase this left knee flex, I'm going to be completely out of balance. Or if I turn the pelvis like this the right way and I increase my knee flex, that is going to be changing the orientation of what the pelvis is doing. So what I would challenge you to do right here when you're practicing this, number one, don't start out by hitting golf balls. Okay? Golf balls are not going to help you learn how to move the right way functionally initially to start out. I would tell you to stand in front of a camera or get in front of a mirror and use that way to actually learn and see what this is looking like right here. Because again, from here, this is my wrench analogy. I'm taking my right hip, and you'll see I'm working this now. This is now worked closer to the center of my feet. So now when this starts to unwind, which I'm not moving pressure back into this right hip socket, my trail hip socket, because if I do that, if I rotate around this axis, well, that's going to put my upper body into too much of a forward bend. It can cause the club to come in steep, and it creates more compensations like standing up, etc., and things like that. So make sure when you start doing this, take these things slow. Stand in front of a mirror. I cannot stress this enough. Learn how to move the right way functionally first, and even do it without hitting golf balls. So like if I was right in here, I'd say, all right, this is how I would run through a practice session and a feel for this right here. I would go here, I'd run to my takeaway, turn my right hip back towards center. I can feel twist against the ground. That was perfect. I'm here. Now I'm going to keep my right hip back. I'm going to move the left back to square, and now I'm going to bring it down to impact. Cool. I'm going to do that. I'm going to feel it again. Swing it back, pelvis back to square. There's impact. And even some of the first shots that I would hit, I might actually hit them like this. So I'd go here, takeaway, turn the pelvis back to here, and I might only hit the golf ball that far initially when I'm trying to learn a very new movement pattern for myself. If you start out at Mach 10, I promise you this, you are going to probably do the same stuff that you've always done. We're going to expect different results. We're going to get frustrated, and we're going to think, oh my God, there's no way I can ever change this. Start off slow, work it up faster, do it in pieces, do it in freezers, and learn how to get the pelvis to really be a huge part of controlling what you do in the backswing, in the transition, and how you stabilize and you get yourself better at impact. I hope you enjoyed this video today. Click that link below to subscribe. If you haven't, go ahead and click the other link I have right there. Watch that video on understanding setup for free. Look out for these videos every single Friday coming to you on YouTube. Thanks.